this is Romanosky from Calgary, Canada. I'm shooting from the lug nuts facility. Now we normally deal with, get a picture of some of these cars here, kind of antique and specialty cars, you know, Jaggy type and a BMW station wagon and Citroen 2CD and, you know, lots of older stuff and specialty cars. This isn't one of those cars. This is basically just basic transportation. It comes to me from a friend's mother. She's 85 and just quit driving. Okay? So what this is a 2014 Hyundai Tucson, and it is the GL trim level, so base trim level, but with four-wheel drive. It's covered about 108,000 kilometers. It is, like I said, it's basic transportation. Although this example is, I would say, a particularly nice one. The ownership history shown in the Carfax shows regular annual or earlier than annual oil changes, and mostly in the U.S. in Palm Springs. So this car was owned by somebody who then wintered in California and drove the car back and forth. So it's a clean car with no accident history, with original paint throughout. We can check that with a paint meter. We can put it on the hoist and have a look at it, and you'll see that the undercarriage is extremely clean. And interior is not marked up, and really it doesn't have any flaws worth mentioning. It's, you know, a few stone trips from normal use, and that's about it. So it's a good car, you know, good basic transportation for somebody. And we can do this video, and I'll just you know, walk through it really quickly. We can see some touched up stone chips, as you'd expect from driving in the summer in Calgary. And you know, the front bumper has its fair share of those. There's nothing that's big, but there are, you know, there's a number of smaller chips that have been touched up. I think there was one area here where it rubbed against something, and you know, you can see the touched up areas here. Okay, so there's no cracks on the bumper, and the bumper fit is still factory. You know, sometimes if they're damaged, you get gaps where the plastic is broken, or the inner wheel arch is broken, and the bumper comes adrift or is loose from the body from an impact, and so we don't see that here. And the vehicle has obviously a pretty high arrival angle, so we're not expecting any scrapes on the lower front bumper, which we get with some of our fancier cars, but not this one. Okay, so that's a nice shape. Again, we've got you know, some other minor stone chips in the hood that have been filled in. If we go to the windscreen, we can see some pits, but there's no cracks that have started, just a few cracks. We can see this sticker here. That's not a cheap country club. At least it goes to show you that it's lived in a good home. I guess the only important thing with that is it's always been garaged. Okay. All right, so going around the car, now these are steel wheels with hubcaps, and they have fresh Michelin X ices. They probably only have 500 kilometers on them, so they're brand new tires that we put on. Going down the side of the car, I didn't see any flaws, except I think there was a dent. Yeah, there's a little ping right here. That would be easy enough to get out with paintless dent remover. I just haven't been able to schedule the guy to do it. So there's that. If we go along to the rear bumper cover, again, we have, you know, factory fitment. I guess it's a little bit out there, but that's normal. That's just the way they came. We don't have any marks or scuffs on the bumper cover. You know, sometimes the tailgates in these have a bit of a hard life. We have 3M that's been applied, which is actually a really smart move, just to for scratches. This plastic isn't scuffed up. I do have the luggage cover coming for the car, but I don't have it now. Okay, but it will come with the car. All right, nothing too fancy in this car. It's manual release and closure, which I wish our BMW had, because it's $1,000 to replace the strut on that. A little touched up area here on the front bumper. There's a couple little pings in this door, one there, and there's another one. Yeah, there's a little tiny one there, okay? The passenger front door looks fine, this fender looks fine, all the wheel trims are in good shape. Again, it's fresh tires. I'll go over it with a paint meter quickly, just to show you that it's original paint. This records in micrometers, so that's 1/1000th of a millimeter. And original paint from the factory is anywhere from about 150 to maybe in the low 200s for original paint. A repaint, a quality repaint, might be 350 to 500 or something like that. And then a bad paint job's either it doesn't read at all or it's over a millimeter, okay? Or it's a classic car and they use lots of filler. But we can just start here, and I can just go through this quickly here. I've already done it, so I know what the readings are, and it is all factory paint depth. So 123. Expect a variance of 1/10 of a millimeter, just because the way the paint goes on. We're talking very, very fine measurements here. So, okay, it's 100, 95.5, 102, 129, 118, 112, 128, 120, 120, 132, 117, 106. Let's go down the hood here. 130, 157, 131, 138, 113, 143, 40. And you're basically looking for consistency. Big jumps that tell you that it's had paint work. Sorry, 116. You're not going to be concerned if 0.05 of a millimeter difference. So 113, so they're all in the low 100s, which is thinner than you get in many cars, but obviously it's thicker paint that you're worried about, not thinner paint. Unless it's been polished so much there's nothing left, but that's not the case here. Okay, so we have consistent paint depth throughout this car, and no evidence of any paint work. Obviously, we're not expecting anything on the hood here. Okay, so an original paint car, clean Carfax, there's no question about that. Car's never been in an accident. So let's just look in the inside of it here, and maybe just come over this way. We don't see any, we have maybe a little mark on the sill there. These areas are in pretty good shape. They're not cut up. This scoring, that's from somebody leaving the seatbelt like that and closing the door. So the sticker's a little bit chewed up, but whatever, it's just a sticker. The seat's look in really nice shape. There's actually no wear at all. that we can see. When you get a car that's not driven in the winter, that means the interior is not filled up with gravel and dirt. And when the interior is not filled up with gravel and dirt, it's not acting as an abrasive to wear out the carpet. So not only are the cars in a lot better shape underneath because they're not driven through the highly corrosive salt grit solution they use here, but the interiors are in a lot better shape too because the salt and everything doesn't fill up the footwells of the car and wreck the carpet and so on. So interior of the car looks, well, I mean, it looks almost new. And you know, these cars, you know, they're basic transportation. People use them to haul their families around and so forth. And also older people use them as well. If you get one that was used by a young family with a bunch of babies in the back and stuff, I mean, sometimes the interior is destroyed. I mean, the kids can be really hard on it, what with, you know, throwing up all over it and eating their meals and so forth, and the kids are just really hard on cars. So this, I'm actually quite confident, has never seen a child in the back. In fact, it doesn't look like anybody's ever been in the back of this car. It actually really looks brand new back here. It does not look like it's ever carried people in the back. If you look at the floor mat, you know, there's like the edges of the floor mat and so on. I mean, they don't look like that if they've carried people in the back. They'd be, you know, a lot dirtier, and you'd see wear on the edges of the floor mat. So this is, you know, and given that we know the history of the car from the Carfax, I think we can safely conclude this was an older person's car who was a snowbird, who used the car to drive from Calgary to California where they had a summer place. So it wasn't in the winter, and there were never kids in the back. It was just, you know, basically older people who owned this car. I don't know that for certain, but I'm pretty sure, you know, having looked at thousands of cars over the last 25 years that I've been doing this. Okay, so in the back as well, we, you know, like we don't see any, like if there were child seats, these are the anchors, and then the metal, you know, you'd see evidence that was ever used. So that's just, again, confirming my hypothesis there. And it doesn't look like anything's ever been carried back here because, you know, none of this is scratched up, and the carpet's in perfect shape, and this doesn't look like anybody's ever used it. It looks brand new back here. Okay, so let's just go on the engine bay. Okay, so it all looks pretty tidy. This is the 2-liter new engine, like NU, that's what the family of engines is called. It's about 150 horsepower. Again, it's made it to a 6-speed automatic gearbox and all-wheel drive. So it is the smallest engine with the best fuel economy. There was a 2.4-liter version, and I think it had 175 horsepower, so it's only 25 horsepower anyway. There were two 4-cylinder versions, one 2-liter, one 2.4. So this is the smaller one, and it gives better fuel economy. Performance is still adequate. It doesn't feel slow. We have a block heater, which is kind of unusual for cars these days because they're running synthetic oil. So it's kind of rare to see a block heater, which is useful, especially when it's 35 below in Calgary. And otherwise, you know, the engine bay is unremarkable. The engine bay, it's tidy, it's clean. This car was sold by Kramer Mazda to my friend's mother last year. So she's only had it a year and only put less than 1,000 kilometers on the car. And then so I have the mechanical fitness assessment from Kramer Mazda, and the brakes are still at least half. And like I said, the tires were down, and we replaced the tires. Okay, so now we'll do a video of the underneath of this 2014 Hyundai Tucson. And so we're looking for a few things. The main one I think is corrosion, but also accident damage from road debris, incorrect jacking that can damage the jacking points. What else are we looking for? See if all the fasteners for the under trays are there, and just get an indication, see, you know, whoever is working on this car, how, you know, how careful and conscientious they were when they were taking stuff off and putting it back together. Sometimes you see all kinds of things. Okay, so first of all, we can look at the front spoiler, and on a car like this, it's not too vulnerable, so it's unusual for that to be scraped up, and it isn't. You know, sometimes these things get bashed into curbs, and you know, all these pieces can be torn, and they're not. These little fasteners here can be pretty, I don't know. They're many times, these ones actually look, they're metal, but many times they're plastic, and they break or they get chewed up and they don't get replaced properly. And it looks like you have to take this off to do the oil service. So anyway, the fasteners are all there. This piece isn't cracked. Oh no, somebody thoughtfully put a panel, a hole in the panel so you can actually get the oil filter. Okay, and we could look in there, and you know, we don't see any oil leaking. If the oil does leak, you know, the bottom of these pans are like saturated with oil, and we don't see any evidence of that. It looks pretty good underneath there. Okay, so let's put this back where it's supposed to go, and it's nice that it's still in place. We can look at the suspension. Now we can look for cracked boots on the CV, and they're not. We'll look for rusted fasteners, and they're not. Calgary can be really, really brutal with corrosion. And so this vehicle spent most of its life in the winters in California, and you can tell because, you know, normally, you know, these pieces would all be rusted, and all the bolts would be rusted to the point where they don't even want to come off. The backs of the brakes would be all corroded. So there doesn't look to be anything in there that looks like it won't just come off nicely. Okay, so that is a major plus on a car like this, because so many of them, Calgary cars that we see, even after 5 years, everything's just rusted solid. And these cars, you know, there's steel pans and steel suspension arms and so on. So, you know, they start to rust pretty quickly. And so this one's, well, I guess this car is 10 years old and it still looks pretty good. A Calgary car driven through the winter will look like this after 1 or 2 years, to put it in perspective. Okay, so we're looking at the floor pans. I don't see any evidence. Sometimes people will jack them in the wrong places, thinking that this is strong enough when it isn't. The jacking point's over there so that they can get dented. Catalytic converter is still there, so it's actually a little bit vulnerable, isn't it? It takes thieves about 10 seconds to take one of these out and sell it for 300 bucks. Anyway, so we're looking for damage. We don't see it. For corrosion, we see, looks like it was undercoated when it was new. All this looks pretty good. Exhaust looks pretty good. It's mild steel, so you'll see just a little bit of oxidation on that. We don't see any leaks. That is the boot for the drive shaft, and that's not cracked. And we can look to see if there's any leaking from the rear differential, and we don't see it. Here is the rear suspension. Now, we didn't clean this car up at all. It's just the way it came in. So just only the slightest little bit of corrosion. There's no leaking from the brake lines. And yeah, no, this car was undercoated. And I don't see any cracking, you know, any of these rubber bushes. You know, after a while they'll start cracking. The brake hoses can start cracking. Mufflers rust out. You know, so, you know, and again, it's got all its original fasteners. All the rubber's in good shape. I don't see any heavy corrosion on any of the bolts. Nothing that wouldn't come off. I don't see any leaking from the diff. No brake fluid leaks. No damage underneath the car. No evidence of any sort of shoddy repairs or, you know, non-factory parts or anything like that. We don't see any leaking from the engine. Certainly nothing on the floor, nothing on the bottom of the oil pan. It all looks pretty good in there. It's all dry, and well, that's it. Nothing too remarkable. Just a decent car. I did see a little bit of damage here where something scraped the bottom here, so that this plastic piece is a little bit marked up, and a little bit on that front door. Okay, so it's got a few marks. You can't see that from above, but it looks like it caught something there. Okay, and then the rest of it looks pretty good. You can see the new Michelin tires. And so in summary, the car is basic transportation. But it's an exceptionally clean example with original paint, with no collision history, no paint work, with a really clean undercarriage, with no or very little winter driving in Calgary, and you know, entirely a decent, presentable used car. I'm sure there's lots of people who could use a car like this. So anyway, thank you very much. Lawrence Romanosky from Lugnuts, Calgary, Canada.